So recently I've been craving to play some horror games, however it's quite hard to find anything I haven't touched before. I played most big AAA releases and I hope for something more. After I more or less thoroughly checked out some of the games I own, I noticed an indie horror game called DreadOut. I seem to somehow forget about this one, which is unsurprising considering the sheer amount of games your average Steam user collects. Anyway, I always heard mixed things about this game and I always wondered why. The Let's Plays I watched about it looked pretty interesting to me. I dug the atmosphere and I found the Indonesian folklore setting pretty compelling, but I never got around to play it, until now. Now, first things first, let's address the elephant in the room. DreadOut is not a particularly beautiful looking game, and sometimes it runs like shit. Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah, exactly. What did you see right now? That's awful. In fact, in terms of visuals, this game straight up looks like spread ass cheeks. Yeah, I know it's not the most tasteful analogy, but if you're anything like me, then this isn't that big of a deal. I actually think there's a certain charm when it comes to these amateurish looking games, and it's not just DreadOut. There's, for example, something about the PS2 era of horror games that always strike me as incredibly atmospheric and way more riveting than most of the horror games of the current age. Games like Haunting Ground, Resident Evil 4, Silent Hill 3, and more importantly Fatal Frame, their dirty look with a muted color palette of DreadOut immediately reminded me of those aforementioned games, but especially Fatal Frame, which, speaking of, it seems to serve as a direct inspiration for DreadOut. Believe it or not, but despite my possession of both Fatal Frame 1 and 2, I haven't played either of those yet. I played Fatal Frame 1 for about a few minutes just to check if it actually runs, since I bought a used copy of it. The same applies to Fatal Frame 2. Both games, but more so the sequel, are very much impossible to get anywhere cheap nowadays. More so if you're looking for an unused copy, but I digress. Now, the reason I mentioned it is because I can really compare DreadOut to Fatal Frame, and despite its similarities, I assume both games still stand for themselves. DreadOut is segmented into 3 acts. Act 0, that is basically just a tutorial, Act 1 and Act 2. You play as Linda, a something-year-old high school student who gets, after a not-so-successful school trip, sucked into the spirit world for whatever reason. Here we get to first meet our cast of characters, and well, they're pretty forgettable, yeah. Seriously, I could hardly bother to memorize Linda's name, and that's because she's another silent protagonist, in a genre dominated by interesting, or at least voiced characters. So anyway, as mentioned before, we are just a couple of dumbass high schoolers on a field trip, but unlike the others, Linda seems to have a certain ability, the ability to take pictures. Alright, look, I'm aware of how fucking brain that sounds, especially during my process of writing this shit. And that's where the similarities with Fatal Frame begin. Akin to the camera obscura and Fatal Frame, we use a regular ass smartphone that's later upgraded to a regular ass camera. You get rid of the spirits and demons by taking pictures of them. Almost like you're trapping them in your device, or more like you are cleansing them or whatever. It's not really explained why Linda's capable of such powers, but well, I'll take it. Maybe it is explained and I wasn't paying attention, in which case yours truly might have fucked up a bit, but well. Now, other than in Fatal Frame, it's not really important to wait for your camera to load a shot. You can literally just spam photos and not worry about getting too much into trouble for doing that. Aside from all the fighting, you spend a big portion of this game exploring abandoned buildings, a school, and the Indonesian jungle environments. It's nothing you haven't seen a bunch of times before except maybe the jungle, but I still like how they've captured the isolated feeling that's presented here. Let's talk a little bit about the monster design, goddamn. Look, these motherfuckers are creepy as shit. Okay, some of them are more like crappy than creepy, but most of them boys and girls stand out amongst other contemporary horror games. We got tall ass looking things, these little shits, this fuckboy auditioning for American Idol. Ghosts, and the rest? Well, y'all gotta see it for yourselves. One thing I found confusing though is the story. To be completely honest, it's kinda hard for me to remember what the fuck even happened in the first place. Not just cause of my ADHD brain getting in my way, but more so because some of the things were literally unexplained and caused more confusion than conclusion. I'm not gonna go into much detail cause I'm not big into spoiling anything, and honestly, if you're still willing to give it a shot, seriously, this game is so goddamn short, it'd be a waste trying to explain anything. Yeah, you heard me, DreadOut is feels short, almost to a memeable
4 hours.
degree, except it's even shorter than that. And you know what? Thank fuck for that. In a time where some games feel like they take forever to finish, I like me a much needed shorter experience. And that's it. That's my very short, I guess you can call it a review, I suppose. To be frank, there's a little more to say about this game, but I decided to stop here because of how damn short it is, which again is not a problem. Look, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I'm not trying to sell you a low budget game that most people wouldn't even want to look at, just by the graphics alone. But I still wanted to shed some light on a game that's in my opinion too underrated and frankly kind of overhated. It's not fantastic by any means, but come on, it ain't that bad either. Seriously, I played worse, much worse. So I still think DreadOut is a decent enough game for one evening. Make sure you grab it during sale though, cause I don't recommend it at full price. Oh, and I haven't played its sequel yet. I do plan to change it though. Anyway, thanks for watching. But consider maybe even subscribing. I guess it sounds weird because I'm so fucking small, but you gotta do what you gotta do, you know?